Hi guys, it's me, CHD, and welcome to another episode of the podcast where today we are reviewing the events of what was a pretty mental British Grand Prix weekend. Obviously the weather really helped us out on the race day, but yeah, it was a crazy weekend, very, very exciting, and another British Grand Prix delivers. It is, I think, consistently the best Grand Prix on the calendar. It is just absolutely brilliant what it produces year in, year out. And yeah, another year of absolute craziness, controversy as usual as well. And yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. If you did go to the British Grand Prix, hopefully you enjoyed it despite your bank account being assaulted, quite frankly, by going. And yeah, despite the weather, if you did go to the race day, hopefully you did enjoy the Grand Prix somehow. But before we get on to what happened in the race and what happened for certain teams, let's get into the results of the British Grand Prix. And the results, quite important for the championship, the Drivers' Championship in 2025. Lando Norris wins the British Grand Prix, his first ever win at Silverstone in Formula One, of course, and for the first time since David Coulthard, I believe, a British driver has won the British Grand Prix that is not named Lewis Hamilton. And David Coulthard's last British Grand Prix win was the year 2000, 25 years ago. Just shows you how dominant Lewis Hamilton has been at Silverstone. Oscar Piastri second. We'll get on to that whole controversy in a moment. But yeah, Piastri for me was the real winner of the British Grand Prix. And in third, finally, after 15 years of trying and 39 race starts, Nico Hülkenberg takes third, takes the podium, and finally gets what many have believed he's deserved. And obviously he has, but obviously the reason I, over the years, have criticised him is because in the other, races over the years where he had a chance at a podium, he threw it away. But this time, he absolutely delivered. We will touch on him during this review, absolutely. Lewis Hamilton, fourth, the first Grand Prix at Silverstone where Hamilton has not finished on the podium since 2013. Yeah, it just shows you the downfall of Ferrari, and also Lewis Hamilton in the race. Personally, I didn't think was that great for his own level. He did pull off some really good overtakes, which we'll get into, but yeah, Hamilton missing out the podium, which of course he was very disappointed with, and he should be. Max Verstappen fifth. Verstappen, his championship is over. He will not be winning the 5th World Championship this year, and who knows whether this will be his final year at Red Bull. Pierre Gasly 6th. What a drive from Gasly. A brilliant weekend in an Alpine car that had no right to be really in the top 10 all weekend, but yeah, he put it there. Lance Stroll 7th. Alexander Albon 8th. Fernando Alonso 9th, and George Russell, despite having about a million pit stops for dry tyres, intermediate tyres, did finish in P10, even though he was well over a minute behind the race winner. So those are the results of the British Grand Prix. Let's get into how that affects the championship standing. So Oscar Piastri is still in the lead, but is 8 points clear now of Lando Norris, who really is right on the tail of Piastri. Still for me, as we'll probably touch on in a moment, Piastri is I still think, the favourite for the championship, but Lando Norris winning these last two races has absolutely closed things right up when I don't think many of us were expecting Norris to win 2 races in a row, given the form he's shown this year. Max Verstappen, in third, and he's not going to win the championship. The Red Bull car is not good enough, and Max has not put together, as of late, consistently good enough results to keep himself in play in the Drivers' Championship. George Russell 4th, Leclerc 5th. Leclerc obviously finished outside of the points. He was absolutely terrible in the race. Lewis Hamilton 6th. 7th, Antonelli. 8th, Alexander Albon. 9th, now Nico Hülkenberg in the Sauber. And 10th, Esteban Ocon for Haas. And then on the constructors' side, McLaren are way clear of now Ferrari second, who are only 12 points clear of Mercedes in third. Red Bull are now 50 points behind Ferrari in second and fourth. So yeah, Red Bull, I would be very surprised if Red Bull finish any higher than fourth in the championship. I just don't think they've got the good enough, driver lineup, but also the car just is not there. Williams, fifth. Sauber in now sixth place, the highest they have been in the Constructors' Championship, I think, since 2022 when they were Alfa Romeo. Racing Bulls in seventh, level on points with Aston Martin eighth. Haas in ninth, and Alpine still last, but they did score a lot of points, so they are a bit closer to the action ahead of them. But the midfield is so exciting in the Constructors' Championship. I think really anybody, as long as they put together a good amount of point scoring finishes and form, I think anyone below, from fifth place with Williams and below could finish in fifth in the Constructors' Championship. It's going to be a very exciting rest of the season in the Constructors' Championship in the midfield. And of course, very important positions financially for certain teams. But before we go into the teams, let's just quickly touch on the race pace that we saw in the British Grand Prix. McLaren, no surprise, they were absolutely miles ahead of the rest of the field. In changeable conditions, especially wet conditions, that McLaren is on a different planet compared to everything else. And yeah, they were 0.8 of a second per lap during the British Grand Prix, quicker than the next best car being the Ferrari. Sauber then third, very impressive pace, considering in qualifying they were miles off of it in the dry. But yeah, they were the third best team in the race. Mercedes just behind in fourth, and then Aston Martin. Red Bull, obviously Max's spin and then being in traffic didn't help the race pace of the Red Bull, but the Red Bull was miles off the pace of the McLaren, as we saw when Piastri passed Verstappen early on in the race. That Red Bull was nowhere near the McLaren. And then Haas, Alpine, Williams, and then Racing Bulls, of course, there is no data for them because Lawson retired on the first lap and Hadjar didn't really do enough laps to really determine what the true pace of the Racing Bulls car was in the Grand Prix. Pretty poor race for the Racing Bulls team. Anyway, before we get on to the race winners McLaren, firstly, we are going to touch on Nico Hülkenberg getting his first podium in Formula 1. Now, obviously it was a great drive, but I don't think people understand just how great it was. He started last on the grid, technically. Obviously, there was a car behind him, Colapinto, who never started the race, but on the actual grid itself, Nico Hülkenberg was the last driver on the grid in 19th place. And he somehow dragged it up to third. He obviously was helped quite a bit at the start by quite a few cars pitting. He then got himself up to, I think, 12th place because of that. And then after they all pitted for another set of intermediate tyres, once the rain started to come down for the first time during the race, Sauber made a brilliant decision to pit Hülkenberg first out of those cars that all went on to another set of inters, and Hülkenberg gained massively from that and ended up magically up in, 5th place. Then Verstappen spun, and then he was able to pass Lance Stroll, the Sauber proving quicker in the race, very impressive. And then Hülkenberg was able to hang on to it ahead of the Ferrari of Hamilton. Ferrari got it a bit wrong with, I think, pitting, or when they pitted Hamilton. We'll get onto that later. But yeah, Hülkenberg, the drive itself from him in terms of the pace he showed, absolutely amazing, especially in those conditions. But Sauber, we must give a lot of credit to their strategy team for pitting him the first out of all the cars that needed to go onto a new set of inters, because that really did help his Grand Prix. And great for Sauber, obviously, this podium. The first podium they've had since the 2012 Japanese Grand Prix. 13 years without a podium, and they've took it. So yeah, brilliant to see, and also really great to see ahead of next year when they become the Audi Formula One team. This Sauber team really making big strides compared to where they were last year or the year before. But yeah, shout out to Hülkenberg. Again, I have criticised the guy a bit over the years in terms of the other chances he had at a podium. He failed. Brazil in 2012, Hockenheim 2019. But on this occasion, he delivered, even though it was the least likely time for him to get a podium, given that, again, he was last on the grid. But he did it anyway. So, yeah, congratulations to Hülkenberg. Got absolutely what he deserved yesterday in that race. And let's hope he keeps up this great form for Sauber, because he has been one of the best, I'd say, top 3-4 drivers on the grid in these last, say, 5 races we've had. He has been absolutely on it in that Sauber. The Sauber has improved, there's no doubt about it. It has improved with upgrades that were brought a few weeks ago, but Hülkenberg has been on absolute top form, and yeah, great to see, and hopefully it will continue going forward. But let's touch on, the race winners, McLaren, and all there is really to talk about is the moment behind the safety car that me and Nib on commentary for the race watch along obviously went crazy about. In terms of Lando Norris winning, again, Lando for me was not the better driver in that race. Oscar was the better man, but he got the penalty behind the safety car. And with that penalty for Piastri, I still think it's bullshit because of the FIA suddenly, for a change, deciding to call in the safety car, or at least the message, to the drivers and to the whole world that the safety car was being called in. Them doing that a lot later in the lap than what they normally do, as far as I'm concerned, is bullshit. And I will be doing a video and uploading it hopefully this Friday about that Piastri incident, because even though, looking back, technically speaking, Piastri had to be penalised, I still think he was set up to fail regarding that whole incident. But yeah, in terms of pure driving, Oscar Piastri for me was the better man. Lando ended up getting the win, so I hope he's happy. But yeah, Piastri was the better man in that Grand Prix yesterday. And I am still, even though the gap is now 8 points, I am still pretty confident that Oscar Piastri is going to be the world champion for 2025. Because in most cases, in most races even, I think Piastri is not just better than Norris, I think he beats Norris in most races where there isn't penalties and whatever shenanigans going on. We've seen in almost every race this season, Piastri has been the quicker and just better performer in a race situation, and I think that will only continue as the season goes on. And Lando Norris will continue, I'm sure, at some point to make mistakes, and Piastri, I am confident, again, will win the Drivers' Championship, because especially in a race situation, Piastri most of the time gets the job done, when Lando, I don't think, does. So if you're a Piastri fan, I wouldn't panic. Obviously, not winning yesterday was disappointing, because winning yesterday's Grand Prix would have put the lead in the championship up to 22 points. It would have put Oscar in a much more comfortable position. But I still think it's looking good from Piastri's point of view. And with Max still in the mix, he still will get his pole positions and probably eventually get another race win or two. That will have an effect on the championship in terms of, who Verstappen is battling or whatever. And Ferrari, yes, they didn't have a good weekend in terms of results, but Ferrari definitely, in dry weather, have improved a lot and will improve, hopefully, again at Spa with their new suspension. So Ferrari and Red Bull will have quite an effect on who wins the championship. because the two McLaren drivers are not just going to be racing against each other. They're going to be racing against the Ferrari drivers and Max. And when it comes to those situations, I trust Oscar Piastri more than I trust Lando Norris. So, yeah, my money is on Piastri to win the World Championship. Whether it happens or not, we'll have to see. But I'm pretty confident that Oscar will win his first World Championship. Whether it's at the final race or a couple races before the end, I'm confident that he will get the job done in 2025. But yeah, congratulations to Lando. Congratulations to McLaren. They were clearly the best team in the race. Regarding the next Grand Prix at Spa in 3 weeks, it's going to be a tough race, I think, for 2 reasons. One, Max Verstappen around Spa is unbelievable. We've seen that in the last few years. He is easily the best driver around that circuit. And Ferrari, with their new upgrades as of recent that have worked, and the new one that's coming at Spa, the new suspension, if they can improve by yet another quarter of a second, I think Ferrari will be right in there, as long as it's dry, fighting for pole and the race win. So the Belgian Grand Prix is not going to be easy whatsoever for McLaren. Might be similar even to last year's Belgian Grand Prix, when McLaren were not on pole. They didn't end up winning, but they were close to winning. But ultimately, they just didn't have quite enough to get the job done because other teams were quite strong. Might be a similar weekend for McLaren. And yeah, I think it's going to be, if they win the Belgian Grand Prix, that will be a massive win, because I think the competition will be quite stiff, especially with Verstappen and one of the Ferrari drivers in a much improved Ferrari car, hopefully, being right up there. So yeah, McLaren, wouldn't be surprised if they don't win the next Grand Prix. Again, it will be close, they'll be right in there, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Ferrari or even Max Verstappen taking victory at Spa. We'll have to see. But yeah, that's McLaren. Let's go on to next up. I think we'll go on to Ferrari, because there's a lot more to talk about regarding Ferrari in terms of the Grand Prix weekend they just had. In the dry, Ferrari legitimately, I think, had race-winning pace. They could have had pole. Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc both bottled it at the very end and ended up 5th and 6th. Very disappointing result, but the pace was there. Let's not deny that and pretend otherwise. They had the pace to get on pole. They just failed the drivers to deliver the lap. And then the race, obviously, was a wet one, and in wet conditions, the Ferrari is nowhere near the pace of the McLaren. It's better in the wet than it was in Melbourne at the start of the season compared to McLaren, but it's still nowhere near the pace of that McLaren. So they were never going to win the British Grand Prix, but it is very disappointing that Lewis Hamilton didn't get on the podium. That would have been at least something for Ferrari to take away from Silverstone. But yeah, disappointing they didn't get it. According to the team boss of Ferrari, Fred Vasseur, they did lose the GPS on Hamilton's car halfway through the race, so that made things difficult in terms of running Hamilton's race. In terms of running Charles Leclerc's race, they absolutely flopped on that. It feels like with every pit stop, they got it wrong with Leclerc in terms of what tyres they went onto and when they pit, and that really hurt Leclerc's race. But I must say also that Leclerc in the race, I didn't think covered himself in any glory. There was an incident with Carlos Sainz where he had slight contact with Sainz and they both went off the track at Stowe. There was a couple other moments where Leclerc went off the track. Leclerc did not cover himself in glory. I mean, he did say after the race that the setup he had was a very much a dry setup, but given how good we know he can be, that was a poor performance, not just in qualifying, but the race as well. That was a really poor weekend, and it's got to be a strike against him this weekend against Leclerc, because Silverstone is a driver's circuit. This is a circuit where the drivers really show why they are the best, why they are separated from the next, say, group of drivers on the grid. Max showed that. Piastri, I'd say, showed that. Hamilton at times showed that, especially with some of the overtaking he did. Leclerc did not show that. Where normally at Silverstone, he's really quick. But this weekend, he was just awful. And you can't paint it any other way. Leclerc had an awful weekend. Now, I'm hoping that's just a blip for Leclerc and for Ferrari, because it was a very messy race from them. And again, to not get a podium from that race was very poor. But the fact is, in the dry, their car is much quicker. And I think now is able to fight for at least pole position around certain tracks. And if this new, I think it's rear suspension upgrade, if it does work at Spa and gives them an extra, like I said earlier, 2 or 3 tenths, I think they can start winning races as long as it's dry. In the wet, McLaren are just way too quick, but in dry conditions, I think Ferrari can start winning races from the next Grand Prix on. And I think at Spa, I would not be surprised if Ferrari won the Belgian Grand Prix, because again, in dry conditions, their car it's right there now and could get better with this suspension upgrade as well. So we'll see with Ferrari. I wouldn't necessarily expect them to get pole. I'd probably expect Max Verstappen to get that, considering just how amazing he is around Spa, and plus just how amazing of a driver he is in general. But in the race, I really could see Ferrari winning that. I really could. So keep your eye on the Scuderia at the next Grand Prix, where I think they very well could get their first win of the year. But if you're a Ferrari fan, don't be completely disappointed with what happened, because even though, they didn't get the best result they could, at least fundamentally in the dry, Ferrari have took quite a step forward. That there is no doubt about that. Next up, we'll go on to Red Bull Racing, and really Max Verstappen. Yuki Tsunoda had another disaster of a Grand Prix. For Verstappen, in terms of the race, there's nothing he could have done about the McLarens. They were way too quick for him in just any condition, I think. And also, in the wet, Max had for qualifying, and this is what makes his pole position even more amazing, is that Max had, according to Christian Horner, a Monza-level setup on in terms of cutting wing off compared to what they would do normally. That just shows you how amazing of a pole position lap that was, especially him being the quickest in the middle sector with a car set up like that. So, just even more praise must go to Verstappen for that. But in wet conditions, if you've got a Monza-style setup, you've got no chance against the McLarens. So, it was not a surprise he was going to lose out to the McLarens. But in terms of what happened with the Piastri incident, for me, again, like with what happened with Piastri, there was nothing I think Max could do. He, was caught out by Piastri braking late. Piastri was caught out by the safety car turning its lights out very late. Max went ahead of Piastri accidentally. That really hurt his tyres because they would have cooled down massively. And then when he tried to apply the power out of Stowe, spun, and that destroyed his race. When he probably, I think he would have took the podium, not in glorious style, but I think he would have managed to hang on for a podium had that spin not occurred. But, decent comeback drive to 5th, but his championship is over. Verstappen, the car is just not good enough. He, as he proved in qualifying, is absolutely good enough to win the championship, but the car simply is not there. So Red Bull, first year it's going to be they haven't won a championship since 2020, and this very well could be Max's final year at Red Bull. I still think he'll probably stay at Red Bull for 2026, but I wouldn't be surprised if he left at this point. In terms of the next Grand Prix, again, because Max is so great around Spa, I think he can take pole in the dry and probably even win the Belgian Grand Prix if it's dry. But we'll have to see how the performance is. But Max around Spa is another animal altogether. So don't count out Verstappen winning the next Grand Prix. But even if he does, unless Piastri and Norris both have, really low points scoring finishes or don't score points at all, then Max is still not going to be a championship contender. He's 69 points behind now. So yeah, it is over for Verstappen. And we'll quickly finish up with Mercedes-Benz, who had a pretty poor weekend. Russell did the best he could in qualifying, put it fourth on the grid, but that was really Russell dragging pace out of the Mercedes that wasn't really there, and getting himself way higher on the grid than that car deserved to be. It did not deserve to be higher on the grid than the Ferrari cars, as the race proved. In the race, they tried desperately to outsmart the rest of the field and get onto set of dries earlier than everybody else to try and, again, outsmart everybody else and try and win the race that way. But they just did it way too early on both occasions, and that really hurt their Grand Prix. Russell, I still think, drove well in the race, but the team just messed up the strategy in terms of when they decided to go for dry tyres, and that really hurt his Grand Prix. For Antonelli, same. His Grand Prix was hurt by the poor strategy and then got smashed into the back of Hadjar up to Copse Corner. Nothing that could have been done about it. Hadjar couldn't see, and Antonelli couldn't see Isaac behind either. So it was just a racing incident at the end of the day. But yeah, only 1 point for Mercedes. A poor weekend, but not really a surprise, because Mercedes, I think, consistently all weekend had the slowest car out of the top four teams. So it's not a surprise they ended up nowhere near a podium, because they were not podium material at all during the weekend and haven't been in the last couple races, you must say. We'll see what they do at the next Grand Prix, whether this poor form of the last couple weekends will continue. I personally think they will be a bit better at Spa. I think they'll be maybe not finishing on the podium, but I think they'll be podium contenders, which, again, they haven't been in the last couple races. So I think they'll be probably a couple tenths closer to the front of the field than they were in the last couple weekends. So, yeah, should be better performance for Mercedes at Spa, but don't be expecting anything quite like what they did last year, which, of course, is win the Belgian Grand Prix. But that is the review of this British Grand Prix. Yeah, what a Grand Prix weekend it was. It delivered yet again. There is now a 3-week break until the next Grand Prix. As I don't know if I said earlier, but I will be uploading a video this Friday talking about the Oscar Piastri incident and analysing why Piastri, why it happened, but also why Piastri was screwed over and set up to fail in regards to that incident. So I will be going through that on Friday. And then the rest of the break between now and the next Grand Prix, I will be getting videos ready for the summer break. So yeah, there will be a lack of content on the channel until the next Grand Prix, but once we're done with the double header of Spa and Hungary, then it's the summer break, and then there will be content on the channel during that break. So yeah, it's for a good thing. So yeah, that's the plan going forward for the next 3 weeks. So yeah, there'll be a video this Friday, and then for a couple weeks there will be nothing on the channel until qualifying day at the Belgian Grand Prix. So, yeah, make sure to come along for that, and we'll see what occurs at the Belgian Grand Prix. I'm expecting it to be not an amazingly exciting race, but I'm expecting it to be a very competitive one up front. Again, Verstappen, the Ferraris, the McLarens, I think will all be right in there fighting for the win. Kind of like we had, or we may have had, if it was a dry race at Silverstone. So, yeah. I am really looking forward to the Belgian Grand Prix. So make sure to join me for that later this month. Before you go, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. But until my video this Friday analysing the Oscar Piastri safety car incident, and until the next Grand Prix on the calendar, the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa in 3 weeks' time, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.